1923. Season 2 was already facing controversy, but now, the final episode is officially canceled. That's right. Everything we were expecting, every moment we were waiting for, it's all gone. Taylor Sheridan just pulled the biggest trick yet, and this time it's not just frustrating, it's downright shocking. And what's worse, no one saw this coming. No big announcement, no dramatic reveal, just a sudden quiet update that left fans scrambling for answers. And honestly, this feels like a complete betrayal. So, what really happened? Why was the final episode canceled? And what does this mean for the future of 1923? Let's break it all down, because trust me, you're not going to like what we've uncovered. At this point, being a Taylor Sheridan fan feels like signing up for heartbreak. Every time we think we know what's coming, he changes the rules at the last minute. But even by his standards, this is next level, because for weeks we were told the 1923 Season 2 finale was going to be a massive feature-length event. The final episode, titled A Dream and a Memory, was supposed to wrap up everything. The Dutton's fate, Spencer's return, Tiana's journey, and whatever chaos Alexandra was about to walk into. But then, out of nowhere, the episode disappeared. It was listed everywhere, on IMDb, on Rotten Tomatoes, even on Paramount's official page. And then suddenly, it was gone. No explanation, no statement from the creators. Just wiped from existence as if it was never part of the plan. But we know it was. And that's what makes this even worse. This wasn't some rumor, some speculation from fans. This was a confirmed episode that just vanished. And now instead of an epic emotional finale, we're left with nothing. A season that ends without the conclusion we were promised. Even major entertainment news outlets were caught off guard. Journalists started scrambling for answers, but Paramount has been suspiciously quiet. And at this point, that silence is speaking volumes. All right, let's get to the burning question. Why was the final episode of 1923 Season 2 suddenly canceled? Because LETs, be honest, an episode doesn't just disappear for no reason. There has to be something going on behind the scenes. And if you've been paying attention to Taylor Sheridan's productions, you already know the answer isn't going to be simple or satisfying. At first, fans thought this had to be some kind of mistake, maybe an accidental update, a scheduling issue, or even a temporary glitch on Paramount's website. After all, how do you just remove a season finale that's been planned for months? But the longer we waited for an official explanation, the clearer it became. This was intentional. Then came the rumors. Reports started surfacing that there were major behind-the-scenes issues during the production of 1923 Season 2. Sources close to the show claimed that the filming schedule had been a disaster, with constant delays, rewrites, and even budget problems. And suddenly it all started making sense. Because here's the thing. 1923 is one of the most expensive shows Paramount has ever produced. Back when Season 1 aired, Taylor Sheridan himself admitted that they were pushing the budget to the absolute limit. Filming on location, building massive sets, hiring top-tier actors, it all adds up. And while Season 1 managed to pull it off, Season 2 seems to have completely fallen apart. One report suggested that Paramount executives started getting cold feet about the cost of the show. They saw how expensive each episode was becoming and realized they might not be able to afford the grand finale that Sheridan had planned. So instead of cutting corners, they cut the episode entirely. And look, I get it. Television is a business. Studios have to think about the money. But here's what makes this even worse. They didn't tell us. Instead of being honest with the fans, they just tried to quietly erase the episode like it never existed. No official statement, no explanation, just poof, gone. And you know what? This isn't even the first time Taylor Sheridan's shows have been a mess behind the scenes. If you followed the drama surrounding Yellowstone, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Think about it. Yellowstone's final season still isn't finished. It was supposed to wrap up in 2023, and here we are still waiting for the last episodes. And why? Because of contract disputes, last-minute rewrites, and Taylor Sheridan's refusal to compromise. The guy is known for making bold, creative choices, but at what cost? And now 1923 is suffering the same fate. The finale we were promised has been erased, and we're just supposed to accept it? But wait, there's more. Because the cancellation of Episode 8 might not just be about money. Some insiders are saying there's an even bigger reason behind this sudden decision, one that could completely change the future of the entire Yellowstone universe. And trust me, it's not what you think. Now, let's talk about the real reason behind this sudden cancellation, because at this point, it's not just about budget cuts or production delays. Something much bigger is happening behind the scenes, and if history tells us anything, it's that Taylor Sheridan and Paramount aren't canceling the final episode because they have to, they're canceling it because they want to. And that can only mean one thing: they're setting up something else. If you've followed the Yellowstone franchise for long enough, you already know that Taylor Sheridan has a habit of not finishing what he starts. Instead of giving fans satisfying conclusions, he constantly finds ways to extend his stories, whether through unnecessary spin-offs, sudden reboots, or last-minute changes that completely rewrite what we thought we knew. And guess what? 1923 is about to become his latest victim. Here's the deal. When 1923 was first announced, it was supposed to be a 2-season story. That was the plan. No extra seasons, no spin-offs, just a clear contained prequel that told the story of the Duttons during the most dangerous time in their history. That's why fans were so excited. We thought we were finally getting a show that knew when to end. But now, all of that is in question. Because let's look at the facts. Paramount is no longer referring to 1923 Season 2 as the final season. They've quietly changed their wording to just Season 2, avoiding any mention of it being the last chapter. And let's not forget, they pulled the same exact stunt with Yellowstone. First, they said Season 5 would be the end, then suddenly they started hinting at Season 6. And before we knew it, we had 5 different spin-offs announced, each one dragging the story further and further instead of actually finishing it. So, let me ask you this. What if they're doing the same thing with 1923? What if canceling Episode 8 isn't actually about canceling it, but about turning it into something else entirely? Because let's be real, Paramount knows how valuable this franchise is. They know 1923 has a massive fan base, and they know people aren't ready to say goodbye to these characters yet. And instead of delivering a proper finale, they're going to use this as an excuse to stretch the story into yet another series. And here's where things get even more suspicious. There have already been rumors about a Spencer and Alexandra spin-off. That's right. Insiders have been whispering that Paramount is considering a new series focusing entirely on Spencer's journey, separate from 1923. And when you think about it, it makes too much sense. Spencer has been stuck in a never-ending cycle of almost getting home since Season 1. What if that's intentional? What if they've been dragging out his story on purpose, just so they can justify spinning him off into his own series later? And if that's the case, then it all adds up. Canceling the final episode of 1923 suddenly doesn't seem like a mistake. It seems like a strategy. By removing Episode 8, they leave the story open-ended. They create questions that don't get answered, and what's the best way to answer those questions? Not with a proper finale, but with another show that forces fans to keep watching. And let's not forget, this would not be the first time Sheridan has done this. He pulled the same move with Yellowstone, spinning off characters instead of giving them real endings. And now it looks like he's about to do the exact same thing with 1923. So here's the big question: is this really the end of 1923? Or is this just the beginning of yet another dragged-out, never-ending spin-off universe? Because at this point, we all know how this game works. And if you were hoping for a satisfying ending, I hate to break it to you. But you might not be getting one at all. At this point, it's clear that something bigger is going on. The sudden cancellation of the final episode of 1923 Season 2 isn't just an accident, and it definitely isn't just a case of budget constraints. No, this is something we've seen before, a deliberate move by Taylor Sheridan and Paramount to keep us hooked, to keep us waiting, and most importantly, to keep us paying. Because let's be honest, this entire franchise has turned into one giant money-making machine. And if you think they're going to stop anytime soon, think again. Let's step back for a second and look at the bigger picture. When Yellowstone first premiered, it was a straightforward show about the Dutton family fighting to protect their land. It had a strong central story, a clear direction, and, most importantly, a planned ending. But then something happened. The show became a massive hit, and instead of letting it reach a natural conclusion, Paramount saw an opportunity. Suddenly, instead of wrapping up the story, they announced prequels, sequels, and spin-offs that no one asked for. And now Yellowstone has become less about storytelling and more about milking the brand for every dollar it's worth. Sound familiar? Because the exact same thing is happening with 1923 right now. The show was originally pitched as a self-contained 2-season event. We were told it would explore a crucial time in the Dutton family history, leading directly into the events of Yellowstone. But just like Yellowstone 1923 has become a massive success, and Paramount doesn't want to let go of that. So instead of giving us the proper finale, we were promised they're keeping the story open-ended, forcing us to follow them into yet another show. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time Taylor Sheridan has done something like this. His entire career has been built on stretching stories as far as they can possibly go. Look at 1883. That show was supposed to be a one-season limited series. It had a clear ending. It told its story. But then, what happened? Paramount suddenly announced 1883, The Bass Reeves Story, turning what should have been a finished show into yet another extension of the franchise. And then there's Lawman Bass Reeves. Originally, fans thought it would be part of 1883, but instead Sheridan changed course and made it its own separate entity disconnected from the original show. Why? Because it allows him to keep expanding his empire without ever actually finishing anything. And now he's doing the exact same thing with 1923. The problem is fans are starting to catch on. People are realizing that instead of delivering satisfying conclusions, Sheridan is just dangling unfinished stories in front of us, keeping us invested in characters we may never actually see get proper endings. And let's be real, this strategy isn't just frustrating, it's disrespectful. We invest our time, our emotions, and sometimes even our money into these shows only to be strung along with endless promises of just one more season or just one more spin-off. And here's where things get even more frustrating. They know they can get away with it. Because no matter how much we complain, we keep watching. We keep tuning in, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. That this time we'll actually get the payoff we deserve. But deep down, we all know the truth. This will never end. Not as long as Sheridan and Paramount can keep stretching the story, milking the brand, and keeping us waiting for something that might never come. So, here's the real question. Do we keep playing their game? Do we keep falling for the same trick over and over again, waiting for finales that never come? Or is it time to finally say enough is enough? Because at this rate, the 1923 finale isn't just canceled, it's being held hostage. And if we don't start demanding real endings, we're just going to keep getting stuck in this never-ending cycle of spin-offs, delays, and broken promises. Now that we've exposed Taylor Sheridan's pattern of dragging out stories and avoiding real endings, let's talk about the other half of this problem, the one that might be even worse. Because as much as we can blame Sheridan for his never-ending spin-offs, there's another force at play here, a force that's even more powerful than Sheridan himself, and that's Paramount. Because at the end of the day, the real reason why 1923's final episode was canceled might have nothing to do with creative decisions and everything to do with corporate greed. Look, we all know how Hollywood works. TV shows and movies are businesses first and art second. But in recent years, we've seen a disturbing trend where studios care less and less about telling good stories and more about squeezing as much money as possible out of their biggest franchises. And if you don't believe me, just take a look at what's happening to Yellowstone and its spin-offs. It's no secret that Paramount has turned Yellowstone into their cash cow. The show's success completely changed their streaming platform Paramount Plus. Before Yellowstone, nobody took Paramount Plus seriously. It was just another random streaming service trying to compete with Netflix and HBO Max. But once Yellowstone exploded in popularity, Paramount realized that this franchise could single-handedly keep their platform alive. And instead of respecting the story, they decided to milk it for everything it's worth. That's why 1923 exists in the first place. That's why 1883 was stretched into multiple spin-offs. That's why instead of finishing Yellowstone, they're launching even more spin-offs, like 6666 and the new Matthew McConaughey-led sequel series. And that's exactly why 1923's finale was suddenly canceled, because for Paramount, the worst thing they could do is actually finish a story. If they wrap things up, if they give fans real closure, then what happens? The audience moves on. People stop watching. They stop subscribing to Paramount Plus. And Paramount can't afford to let that happen. So, what do they do instead? They dangle the promise of more. They stretch things out, make last-minute changes, and rewrite their shows on the fly just to keep people talking, keep people watching, and most importantly, Keep people paying for their streaming service. And let's not forget that 1923 is one of their most expensive shows to produce. So instead of paying to properly finish the story, they just cut the finale, pretend it never existed, and leave fans hanging with no real answers. And the worst part? They think we're stupid enough to accept it. This isn't just frustrating, it's insulting. It's one thing for a show to have a controversial ending, it's another thing entirely for a studio to just erase the ending completely without even acknowledging it. And the fact that they think they can get away with this just proves how little respect they have for the audience. They don't see us as fans, they see us as dollar signs. And as long as we keep falling for it, they're going to keep pulling these same tricks over and over again. Think about it. When was the last time Paramount actually gave us a satisfying conclusion to one of these shows? Because it's not just 1923. They pulled the same stunt with Yellowstone. They left 1883 open-ended when it was supposed to be a one-season story. They're doing it again with Lawman Bass Reeves. It's like they've completely abandoned the idea of telling complete stories and instead just keep making endless continuations that never really go anywhere. And at this point, how much longer are fans supposed to put up with this? How many more times are we supposed to get excited for a show only for it to suddenly change direction, get canceled, or turn into yet another spin-off we didn't ask for? How many more times is Paramount going to pull the rug out from under us all because they think we'll just keep paying no matter what they do? Because if we don't push back, this is never going to stop. The cancellation of 1923's final episode isn't just one bad decision, it's a symptom of a much bigger problem. A problem where studios no longer care about actually finishing the stories they start, because they've realized that leaving things unfinished is more profitable. And the worst part? If they get away with this now, it's only going to get worse. At this point, one thing is crystal clear. 1923's story is no longer in the hands of the writers. It's not even in the hands of Taylor Sheridan. No, the fate of this show and the entire Yellowstone universe belongs to Paramount. And if the cancellation of 1923's final episode has taught us anything, it's that they don't care about storytelling. They care about stretching this franchise for as long as possible, even if it means leaving fans with nothing but frustration and unanswered questions. So now the question is, what happens next? Will we ever actually get the ending we were promised? Or is 1923 doomed to become just another unfinished chapter in the never-ending Yellowstone saga? Right now, the signs aren't looking good. Because despite everything, despite the backlash, despite the confusion, Paramount still hasn't given us a real explanation. They haven't addressed why the episode was canceled. They haven't even acknowledged that there was supposed to be an episode 8 to begin with. They just quietly erased it, expecting fans to move on like nothing happened. And honestly, that's the most frustrating part. Because if there's one thing fans deserve, it's honesty. If there were budget issues, they should have told us. If Sheridan decided to change the ending, they should have announced it. Instead, they've chosen to gaslight the audience pretending this was always the plan, even though we all know that's a lie. Remember, the IMDb page had an episode 8 listed. Rotten Tomatoes had an episode 8 listed. Even Paramount's own website originally had 8 episodes. And now all of a sudden, episode 8 never existed? Give me a break. But let's be real. This isn't just about one missing episode. This is about the future of 1923 itself. Because if this really was the end, you'd think Paramount would be advertising it as a series finale. But they're not. They're calling it a season finale. And that raises some big questions. Is a 1923 Season 3 secretly in the works? Are they planning to break the story off into another spin-off? Or are they just waiting to see how fans react before making their next move? Because that's another thing we need to talk about. Paramount is testing us. They're watching our reactions. They're waiting to see if fans will accept this change or if we'll push back. And if history has taught us anything, it's that if they think they can get away with something, they absolutely will. Remember when they suddenly changed Yellowstone Season 5's finale from a series finale to a season finale with no explanation? Remember when they canceled Kevin Costner's return and announced spin-offs instead of finishing the main story? This is their playbook, and they're using the exact same strategy on 1923 now. So what can we do? We don't have to just sit back and accept this. Fans have power. We've seen it before. When enough people speak up, studios listen. If Paramount thinks they can cancel a major episode and sweep it under the rug without backlash, they're underestimating us. We need to demand answers. We need to make it clear that we won't just accept being strung along indefinitely. Because if we don't stand up now, this won't be the last time this happens. And let's not forget, this isn't just about 1923. This affects the entire Yellowstone universe. If Paramount gets away with this, who's to say they won't do the same thing to the upcoming spin-offs? Who's to say they won't cancel major episodes, rewrite stories at the last second, and drag things out for years without ever delivering real conclusions? If we don't push back now, this is the future of the entire franchise. So let's make some noise. Let's make sure Paramount knows that fans aren't stupid. We're not just going to sit here and let them rewrite history. We're not going to let them cancel episodes without consequences. And most importantly, we're not going to let them destroy 1923 the same way they're slowly destroying Yellowstone. Because at the end of the day, we deserve better. We deserve real endings, not last-minute cancellations. We deserve honest storytelling, not corporate manipulation. And if Paramount and Taylor Sheridan won't give us that, then maybe it's time to stop playing their game altogether.